Hey guys, Welsknight here, and welcome back to the Hermitcraft podcast sort of thing. Welcome back to the Hermitcraft server, guys. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. I'm having a pretty awesome day myself, and we are back to work on the castle, doing a bunch more stuff. If you hadn't already guessed from the opening little bit there, this is going to be another talkie episode because that's, still looking for that inspiration, still looking for ideas, and, it's kind of nice to get some of this grind done while we talk about things and stuff. So, the topic for today, I think, is respect. I want to talk about respect because it's sort of an interesting topic, and I think it's something I could probably ramble on about for a while, so that's the plan. We're going to talk about RESPECT, and we will find out what it... I'm just going to stop there. That was a really terrible pun. But anyway, so yeah, let's chat about respect. So what is respect? First of all, respect is essentially a feeling of admiration. Well, it's a couple different things. You could argue that it's a feeling, right? Like you have this feeling of respect for something, and that's like this feeling of admiration that you get whenever this thing or person or whatever is mentioned, right? That's kind of a respect thing. However, it's also more than that. It's also, in many ways, kind of a way you act, right? Like, you show respect for something. It maybe changes the way you behave a little bit, or something along those lines. How far out does this need to go? Probably all the way to over here. And actually, we need a tower. Let's put a tower, like, right here, I think. This is a good spot for one. Yeah. Here, boop. And then 1, 2, 3. So, because this will be 9 by 9, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait. 9. There we go. That should be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, good. There we go. So anyway, back to respect. Respect is, obviously, I think it kind of all just sort of makes sense. Like you sort of know what respect is. But with that said, there's respect is a very kind of, it's a word that gets thrown around a lot, right? You see respect all over the place in media and television and music and just all sorts of stuff. Respect is all over the place. I'm going to get rid of all of these. And what they don't really elaborate on is that there's different types of respect. And there's different things that, that respect entails. It might be, some sort of way that you act, like I said before, or it might just be like a feeling you get, or whatever. There's a lot of different things that respect could kind of entail. And the one that I want to focus on first is the idea that there are different types of respect, because there's respect for, a person on a personal, individual level, and that kind of is more along the lines of those feeling of admiration. Right, this feeling of admiration you get when you think of a person, or I suppose it could be for a thing as well. But then there's also respect for a position that somebody holds, right? And that goes more along the lines of showing respect as like an action, right? Or not necessarily an action specifically, but more like a set of rules that kind of govern your actions. So you behave in a certain way to show respect for that person, and more specifically for the position that person holds. And that kind of goes into this idea of authority, right? Like someone, I'm saying way too much, but you respect a position. And that would be an example of that would be if I were to ever meet the President of the United States, whether that's the current president or a future president or a past president or whatever, right? If I were to ever meet the president of the United States, regardless of who that president was, and whether or not I liked that president and agreed with their policies and stuff like that, I would still show them a certain level of respect because it's the president of the United States, right? Same is true of, for example, like your boss, right? You would show your boss a certain amount of respect because they're your boss. And you want to, be respectful to them so your boss doesn't hate you. Or your teacher or your principal or whatever, right? These are all positions that someone would hold that have a certain level of respect. Same is true of probably like a police officer. You would probably show a police officer a certain level of respect as well, regardless of whether or not you actually know that person or whatever. And that's respect for a position. And that's something that I ran into a lot, in the military. You're expected to show higher ranking officers a certain level of respect when you're an enlisted soldier like I am. And I'm not going to get into all the complicated stuff about like officers versus enlisted and how that all works. And it's just, it's more than we need to get into for this episode. But basically, there's this idea that, if somebody outranks you and they're in a position of authority over you, you show them a certain amount of respect because of that. And that's true whether or not you actually like that person as an individual. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There we go. And I think that's something that like a lot of people would forget about when they're talking about the respect conversation, right? When they're talking about respect, they kind of forget about respect for a position, right? And how that whole thing kind of ties into this idea of showing respect, because a lot of times you might not respect a person. You might think a person is like a complete and total dirtbag, but you still show them a certain level of respect because of their position of authority that they hold. And that's something that isn't necessarily true for other types of respect. You wouldn't necessarily show someone respect if you don't respect them as an individual, as a person. And that kind of leads into the other type of respect, which is respect for someone on a personal and individual level. And that's really the type of respect that you're talking about when you hear people say super cliche things like respect is earned, not given, and stuff like that. That's something that you've probably heard at some point in your life. It's been thrown around a bazillion times, and it's true to an extent. But going back to that position, whether I'd say that respect for a position isn't necessarily earned. It is given, unless you're talking about, unless you're considering somebody getting into a position of power, earned. if that's what you consider. But I think that phrase "respect is earned, not given" really is more about like you don't just automatically respect someone for being alive. They have to do something, whether they're words or actions or whatever, that causes you to respect them. And that's that personal level of respect. That's you respect someone as an individual and you admire them as a person or whatever. And there's tons of examples of that and tons of ways that someone might earn your respect. It might be, you might respect someone that you have never met in your entire life, but because of their reputation and their accomplishments and the things that they've done and stuff like that, you respect them. An example of that for me would be like Total Biscuit, honestly. Total Biscuit, for those of you who don't know, Total Biscuit was a... please, Skeleton. I'm trying to have a chat. Okay, this is getting ridiculous. Die. And you too. Okay, there we go. Mob's cleared out. Total Biscuit was a YouTuber, gaming critic, consumer advocate, one of the largest names in the YouTube gaming industry, in the scene. And he actually recently passed away, unfortunately. And he was not someone who I ever met in person. We never talked. We never had a conversation. I doubt he's ever watched a single one of my videos or anything like that. We never went to a convention together. I was never on his podcast or anything like that. But he was still someone who I had a fairly healthy amount of respect for. because of his reputation and the fact that he had these ideals that he believed in, and he stuck to them. Absolutely. He stuck to his guns, as the saying goes. And I respected him a lot for that. He did a lot of things to help the YouTube gaming industry and the YouTube gaming scene, and he did a lot for, honestly, just the video game industry as a whole. It's pretty hard to find someone who did more for YouTube in recent years, or at least YouTube gaming in recent years, than Total Biscuit. That was just kind of, he had a very long list of accomplishments, and he had this very kind of strong personality, and he was very stoic and very stubborn, and I respected him for that, even though I never met him. And that's an example of how, you might be in a position where you never actually meet someone, but you still respect them. Maybe it's an athlete, maybe it's a singer, maybe it's a YouTuber, maybe it's whatever. But because of their accomplishments and the things that they've done and their reputation and all that kind of stuff, you still respect them for whatever reason. On top of that, there's also, respect that is actually earned on a personal level. Somebody does something for you or involving you, or you witness it firsthand, and you come to know someone, and as a result, you respect them for that. And that could be a number of things as well. That could be, somebody helps you through a tough time, or someone's willing to go out of their way to help you, or just any number of a million different things it could be. And that one is, I really think, the kind of respect where when people say respect is earned, not given, that's really what they're talking about, is situations where you've never actually, or where somebody has directly influenced your life in some way, whether it's through something they did to help you, or through something you witnessed firsthand, stuff like that. Whatever it may be, that's what causes you to respect that person. Maybe you have a friend who, your car broke down a mile and 100 miles from home, and you called them and they were willing to go out of their way to come and get you. That would be something that would earn my respect, as an example. If I was in a tight situation or whatever, and they were willing to kind of go out of their way and lend me a hand, that would earn my respect. I actually think this needs to come up one. Maybe not. I think it's probably fine. Anyway, building walls. And that type of respect is probably the strongest form of respect. That's like that's the one that motivates you to do things. Respect kind of ties in very heavily with this discussion of like leadership, right? And leadership, this is going to kind of turn into a discussion involving about leadership as well. But leadership at its most basic core, right? The most basic definition of leadership is the ability to get people to do what you want. That's leadership. It's the ability to get people to do what you want them to do, however you accomplish that. Now, there are good leaders and there are bad leaders, and how you go about actually accomplishing that probably directly influences whether people think of you as a good leader or a bad leader. But if you are able to get someone to do the things that you want them to do, congratulations, you are a leader. And there's tons and tons and tons of stories about, especially involving like the military, the idea of leaders in the military, people who would follow their commanders into, the very gates of hell itself, any of the, stuff like that. And those great leaders in a military sense generally are able to lead their men through more than just their position, right? Through more than just the fact that they're in charge on the basis of rank. For whatever reason, their men respect them too in a huge way. They maybe it's because they lead by example, or maybe it's and that's a whole nother thing as well, this idea of leading by example. But maybe the men know that their commander would do absolutely anything for them, or whatever. You could go on and on and on with examples of that. But the idea that leadership is essentially the ability to motivate people to do what you want, that ties into respect. Because if your men respect you, or if I should stop saying your men, because that makes it sound like it's only the military and that there are only men in the military, which isn't even close to true. But if the people that you are leading respect you, it is much easier to get them to do what you want them to do, because they do because someone who is a great leader, if they tell someone to do something, that person will do it not because they have to, but because they want to. And that's a huge distinction, There are plenty of things that someone might get told to do that they don't necessarily want to do. Hey, I need you to do the dishes. Hey, I need you to, clean this disgustingly gross thing. Hey, I need you to do this boring menial task for a while, or whatever. There's so many different jobs and things like that out there that you that have to get done, but that are not at all fun. And a good leader is able to do that. It's able to motivate his people to do those things, even though they're not really fun things. That's part of leadership, and those people want to do it because they want to make their leader happy, right? Or they want their leader to notice them, or whatever. I mean, it could go on and on and on and on with different ideas of this. But I think the basic idea, the basic concept, I think has been fairly clearly explained. And I think that's really what makes a great leader, is the person that leader is, the people being led by that person respect him. And they trust him and believe that, that leader knows the right thing to do, and that they're not going to make things go horribly wrong. And, even though sometimes the things that are being said don't necessarily make sense, there's that level of trust, and that ties in heavily with respect as well. If you respect someone, you trust them for the most part. And that's not necessarily something you get when you're talking about respect on a positional level. You might respect the position of the presidency, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you trust the president to do the right thing, or to make good decisions, or whatever. Even though you would, probably show that president a certain level of respect just because they're the president, you don't necessarily respect them as an individual. You might think that they're a horrible, garbage human being, and you don't trust them to make good decisions, and whatever. That those are huge differences when you're talking respect. And that's why I think it's kind of important to examine this idea of respect more heavily than just the cliche, respect is earned, not given. Because sort of, that's sort of true, but also sort of not. And there's a lot of different things there. Trust is paramount when it comes to leadership and respect and all these other kind of things. I don't know. I think it's kind of one of those weird topics that you could ramble on about forever and ever and ever. I don't know. I've got a long list of people who I respect, and a long list of people who I would show respect to, even though I don't like them. And some of it's basic human decency, right? You don't necessarily, even if you don't respect someone per se, even if you think someone's a terrible person, you don't necessarily want to just absolutely be a total jerk to that person, because that's just not a good thing to do. I don't know. I'm not like a super confrontational person for the most part. I can be if I get very passionate and worked up about something. I can be confrontational, but for the most part, I'm not someone who starts problems, who starts trouble. Right? I never go looking for trouble or try to start a conflict. Sometimes it happens, and that's just part of life. But I don't think that just because you don't respect someone is a good reason to just be a jerk. Like, that's not okay. You want to be a good person for the most part. And showing someone a certain level of respect and being, relatively nice and all those kinds of things, those are important even for people that you don't necessarily like. I think it's important to treat those people. What's the super cliche golden rule? Treat others as you want to be treated. Yeah, I mean, it's true. If you're a jerk to someone, they're going to end up being a jerk to you. I'd rather try and resolve differences and, maybe walk away at the end of the day, maybe not friends with someone, but at least at a level where I'm not directly in conflict with someone whenever they show up. You don't want that. You don't want to just have who wants enemies? There's no need for them. Life is hard enough as it is without enemies. I don't know. I think it's important to try and resolve differences in a respectful manner. And we've talked about on this channel, we've talked about respect in the past when we're talking about civil discourse. I know I did a talkie episode quite a while back about the idea of civil discourse and being able to agree to disagree and have a discussion about something without devolving into name calling and all this other kind of stuff, and how that's something that is largely lost in many ways in today's day and age. For many, I think more than a little bit the result of social media and the fact that you can essentially be a jerk to someone without actually saying something to their face. I think that's a huge part of why civil discourse has not necessarily disappeared, but has very much seemed to have been diminished over the years. I'm also really not liking this tower here. Can we change this? If I go 1, 2, 3, boop. 1, 2, 3. Oh, I would have to redo all of it. You know what? It's okay. We can have a tower here. We'll make it work. It'll be fine. Yeah, it'll be fine. It's okay. Let's build this up a ways. Need to go up one more, I think. Yeah, right here. And then build this over. And then that other one's at the same level, so it should be fine. Right? Yes. Good. Now I completely lost my train of thought. I need to have notes or something when I start these talkie episodes. I need to have talking points on a desk next to me or something, so that when I get sidetracked and lose my train of thought entirely, I can actually get back on topic. But, that's not really. I prefer to improvise and kind of make things up as I go for the most part. I don't think anyone, I'm trying to think if I've ever done a video where I had a proper scripted discussion. I actually made out proper talking points and made out a rough script and stuff like that beforehand. I don't think I have. That's not really my style. There are different ways to make YouTube videos. Some people believe very heavily in a script. Some people really don't. And I think there's a place for both. I don't think one is necessarily better or worse than the others. I think certain types of content require a script more so than others. I think if you're making For example, like a tutorial on something. I think that's a type of content that really lends itself to having a script so that you don't miss anything. I speak from experience when I say that. Sometimes you get started on a tutorial and you record the whole thing and you don't use a script, and then you realize after you're editing it and watching it back and stuff like that that you missed some really important stuff. Like, I think tutorials are one aspect of content that really benefits, like, in a huge way from having a script. On the other hand, I think like more traditional Let's Play type videos, for the most part, don't necessarily need a script. I think if somebody wants to use one, that's totally okay. I think there are some really great kind of scripted Let's Plays out there. None of them pop into my head immediately, but I can't really think of a whole lot of Let's Plays that I think were like I'm trying to think of like my favorite Let's Play of all time. I don't know. There's some really good ones out there, but I'm kind of drawing a blank as to any like specifics. But anyway, it doesn't really matter. I think I have probably rambled on enough on this episode of the Welsknight Hermitcraft podcast. So I think I'm going to call this one right here. We've completely gone off topic by the end of this, but that's all right. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. If you have ideas for a discussion topic, throw them in the comments below. Eventually we'll get back to doing, non-talky episodes, but I'm still kind of trying to decide what I want to do. And in the meantime, we are actually making progress on the castle, so that's the thing. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Links in the description below, so check that out as well. Otherwise, my friends, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.